Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Fan Frenzy podcast. I'm your host, Chris Borgia, alongside co-host Ben Lotman, Gabe Layden. We've been super excited to get this thing rolling. It's been a long time coming. How we feeling today, guys?
Yeah, feeling great, feeling great. It's a fantastic Friday here in Philadelphia for me. You know, looking forward, we got spring break coming up. It's the start of March. March Madness is here, so super exciting stuff happening, and I'm just super excited to get this podcast started.
Yeah. What about you, Gabe?
Again, yeah, just like Ben said, I'm super excited to get this up and running. Back in Jersey City for myself, ready to get spring break underway. And also I'm excited to bring a little bit of a difference of opinion, got some Giants and that stuff hanging up there where you guys might be all Sixers and Eagles and might think Tyrese Max is the next big thing. I might say, whoa, take a second look at Cam Thomas. So
Yeah.
excited to bring a little difference of opinion.
Yeah. So to clear the air up for everybody, it's a new show. It's three Temple students. We love sports. We're big sports fans. So we're just trying to talk a bunch of pro sports. Depending on what it is, we might touch on some college sports, obviously March Madness, college football, etc., etc. Who knows? Maybe even somewhere down the line, Ben. Maybe we'll talk some UFC somewhere down the line.
Hey,
Come
hey, I'm
if
game.
said be, if said be.
Yeah,
What do you think about that, Gabe?
I'm always down. I'm always down for that.
Ooh, cool. So let's get into it. Let's get into it. Ben, I'll let you take it away. I know you wanted to talk some past season Super Bowl storyline. I'll let you start off.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's a really good place to start. We're going to focus a lot on the NFL on today's show. So I think, looking back at last season, we're all going to go through some storylines that we've found to be the best and the most exciting to watch because it was just an insane season, so many different things to talk about and just our opinions. And obviously, all of us here on the show, we're not the biggest fans of the two teams that played in the Super Bowl, but give our opinions on the game and what we thought about that. So
Yeah, definitely. Who wants to start off for storyline? Do you guys want me to start or?
yeah, go ahead, Chris.
All right, cool. This past NFL season was definitely one for the storybooks in general. I mean, there was just so much that went down. Records were literally being broken by guys like Puka Nakua and stuff. It was insane. It was such a good season. Obviously, I have some mixed opinions about the Super Bowl, but we'll save that for a little bit. Other than that, though, for in said storylines, there was just a bunch of great ones. I mean, to touch base on two of them, the Joe Flacco situation in Cleveland. I mean, come on, man. He's like 41. Everybody thought he was done. They were like, he was a backup on the Jets. Like, literally, what was it, last year? I believe he was a backup for the Eagles at one point. They were like, yeah, he's cooked. He's done for. And then the dude just comes out of nowhere and he's like, well, every quarterback's hurt. I might as well, put on a show for at least some people to watch football. And I mean, the dude balled out and he got comeback player of the year, it was deserved. I mean, the other one that I wanted to touch base on besides Joe Flacco, props to him though for having a great season, especially in the situation that he was in. So respect to him. But putting that aside, I mean, talk about Jordan Love, man. Wow, being the backup on a team with a guy like Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Rodgers is that guy. People think of him like, yeah, like he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's a two-time MVP, and like it's literally insane. And when you move off of a quarterback like that into someone like Jordan Love, it's you don't have a lot of expectation because you're like Aaron Rodgers is this guy, and then there's this new guy coming into a system where he doesn't have receivers, he doesn't have a tight end, they just have a solid O line and a really good defense, and you're expecting like what's he gonna do? And he winds up throwing 4,159 yards for 32 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, and a 96.1 QBR rating. I mean, that's a really good season from a guy who didn't have a lot of expectations and a guy that, you know, was just put into a system immediately and he balled out. So mad respect to him. What do you guys
Yeah,
think on that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, just to touch base on both of those, I think the Joe Flacco story is just so awesome and funny because now he's going to be like a legend in not only Baltimore, but a division rival in Cleveland, which I think is just so funny. Like, how often do you see a quarterback be a legend for two teams in the same division? I don't know if that's like ever happened. Now, the legendary status is different. In Baltimore, he brought them a Super Bowl, and yet Baltimore fans seem to hate him for whatever reason. I don't know what it was. I guess it was because he got overpaid, which is, it is what it is, but he brought them a Super Bowl, so you can't get mad at that. But then in Baltimore, he's just a cult hero now. Like, I mean, he led that team to the playoffs. You sign a Deshaun Watson to that crazy contract, but he hasn't been the same since his year-long suspension. We all know what happened with him. He was not leading that team. They looked like they were down in the dumps. Um, people thought they were going to finish last in the division, and they made a push to the playoffs, and it was really impressive. I mean, obviously he was helped by that insane defense, but just a really impressive season for Joe Flacco. And then on the other side of things, why do the Packers just always have to have good quarterback play? Like it's not fair. They go from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers to now Jordan Love. Like the only time they have bad quarterback play is if their starter gets hurt. Like it's not fair. As a fan of another NFC team, I'm sure we can all say that we're envious of the Packers and that organization. But shout out to that organization. They're really good at keeping the quarterback position solid. What about
Yeah,
you? What do you think, Gabe?
Yeah, I mean, how can you hate on that Joe Flacco story? Like, come on now. Like, regardless of what we thought about what we thought about him when he was in Baltimore and in New York and then Philly, like, regardless of our opinions, like, you gotta just look at that story and just be like, wow, like, who would have thought this guy coming out of, it's like, whatever he is, 41 years old, comes out of nowhere and just balls out. And I mean, we're all Temple students here. I mean, I know personally, I was kind of hoping like I would be PJ Walker because the Browns were just going through this whole quarterback trouble, situation the entire, uh, basically 17 weeks. But you know, throughout that entire time, they're trying to figure out who their guy was. I was hoping it would be PJ Walker, obviously Temple guy, but I mean, props to Joe Flacco for coming out of absolutely nowhere and just balling out. Um, and then when it comes to Jordan Love, I think Ben can tell you a little bit about how I feel about Jordan Love. We're both two of the top teams in our fantasy league. I drafted Jordan Love. I started him from maybe like the early part of the season, and he just did his thing. Like huge props to him. I mean, the Packers can just they just know what like. There's nothing. More, I feel like there's not much more to say about that. They just know what they're doing when they choose a QB, and now they got another franchise guy in Jordan Love. And look, I mean, they played good football throughout the season.
Yeah, Ben, I really like the point that you brought up too about how they went from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers to now Jordan Love. I mean, I think it's kind of insane that team like never really sits at the bottom. They're always like dead in the middle or they're good. That
Yeah, I
just
mean,
goes to show
it's
how good
great.
of an organization they are, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they're it's kind of like the Steelers of the NFC. I mean, they haven't had as much championship success, but both those franchises are always in a fight to make the playoffs every single season, and it must be fun to be a fan of those two teams. But for me, for my storylines, I do have a main one, but I do want to touch base and talk about the whole Taylor Swift effect that took over the NFL in the second half of the season. I mean, it it was just crazy how much of an emphasis they put on her. Like as a fan at certain points it did get kind of annoying, but overall it was a net positive for the NFL. I mean, they made hundreds of millions of dollars just from her being on the TV screen like 7 times a game. Um and look, like hopefully next season they give Travis and Taylor a little bit more privacy because I think they deserve to have that privacy. Like they're human beings as well. But really, I mean, I'm sure the NFL was happy about the whole Taylor Swift situation. But with that being said, my main story is down in Houston, Texas, with the Houston Texans, led by CJ Stroud, the NFL Rookie of the Year. He had 4,100 passing yards, 23 touchdowns, and only 5 interceptions. And his completion percentage was 64%. Those are incredible stats for a rookie, one of the best rookie seasons in NFL history. And there was points in the season where he was single-handedly carrying that team, and they made it to the playoffs with a rookie quarterback and a rookie head coach, which just does not happen in this league. Almost never. You could probably count on one hand how many times that has happened. Alongside with CJ Stroud, like I previously mentioned, they had a rookie head coach. And he's just such a good coach. I mean, we've talked about it off air, but he's just he brings everything to that defense. You know, he was the former 49ers defensive coordinator, and for whatever reason, the 49ers just breed good coaches on the defensive side of the ball. So I can only see this Houston team going up. They have an amazing left tackle, an amazing interior offensive line, you know, a great young receiver core, which I didn't even touch on, you know, Tank Dell and those guys, CJ Stroud. They have an amazing pass rush. Like they have so much going for them. So that was my big storyline. But what do you guys think about those Texans and Taylor Swift?
Yeah, Gabe, do you want to start off?
Sure. I mean, I'm not a big Taylor Swift guy. I'll get that out of the way. I thought it was very overplayed, but I mean, how can you blame the NFL? Like when you have that much money just sitting right in front of you for the taking, like you do what you got to do, right? It almost like not to get too off topic here, but it almost reminds me of I think it was last year or 2 years ago when Andrew Wiggins on Golden State Warriors was voted as an All-Star game starter because like some K-pop singer like mentioned him and whatever. It's like insane just like how much of a different audience Taylor Swift can bring to the NFL. And I mean CJ Stroud and Tank Dell, like those guys, that dynamic duo is just insane to watch. And I mean from my standpoint, I'm a little envious, obviously. How can I not be? We had top picks with skill positions. I mean, we had Kadarius Toney went 20th overall, which I mean that was a waste of pick, let's be honest. I mean, Daniel Jones went, I think, 6th overall, and then Saquon Barkley a few years ago. I mean, obviously Saquon, I can't say anything bad about him, but like you see how well the Texans drafted, and it's just there's nothing. Like I wish we could have done that, but all props to them, and it's going to be exciting to see what they do in the future.
Yeah, looking at this Houston team though, just to give a little bit of my thoughts and input. I mean, wow. You know, I said CJ Stroud was gonna be the best coming out this draft and stuff. All my friends like debated me on it. I was like, no way. I was like, if you look at someone like Bryce Young, he's got a lot of shoes to fill. Like they got a lot of holes. But when you look at someone like Stroud, I feel like he was kind of put like really in the spot where he was getting pressured in a sense. Because you know, you put him with a rookie head coach, you put him with this new system of a bunch of young guys, and you're hoping that with this pick that you landed on a franchise player. And I mean, you know, going before this year started, I didn't know who Nico Collins really was, or like Tank Dell, or some of these other guys. Obviously, I knew the big names like Will Anderson and etc. But nobody really thought about or knew some of these other guys on the low end. And I mean, come on now. Like these guys just really balled out and took such a big step. Like Nico Collins in general was so good in the deep ball. Same with Tank Dell for CJ Stroud. And you know, he still had other good weapons like Dalton Schultz was a great pickup for them. You know, you had a little bit of a drop back year from Damian Pierce, but I mean, the stars are shining for that team, and you know, I could definitely see them winning a Super Bowl someday because of how good and how young they are, and it's very bright. Going over to Gabe a little bit. Gabe, what would you say was your favorite storylines?
Yeah, so call me a little biased in my choices, but the first one was Tommy DeVito, third string quarterback, drafted out of Illinois. I feel like it was like a 25-year-old rookie or something like that. I mean, obviously, I didn't know who he was before the season started. I didn't far less expected him to play. Um, Obviously, Daniel Jones goes down. Tyrod Taylor then goes down, and we're left with this guy, Tommy DeVito, who throws for like -9 passing yards in the first game. And it's like, oh boy, I see where the season's going, right? But those next 4 or 5 games starter where he just completely turned it around. I think he had like a 3-1 or 3-2 record. with that Giants team that was not really going to go anywhere, even with Daniel Jones starting, you got to give props to him. Like whether you think he was really the inspiration behind that team or whether you think whatever he was, yeah, got to do the Tommy Cutlets. Um, whether you think he was the leader behind that team or whether you think he was just like he played his role to perfection, you got to give him credit. And he kind of took over the league a little bit. I was fortunate enough to go to the Packers Giants game when we were, I think, 2 games behind the wild card, and I think Green Bay was 1 game behind. So it was a big game. And we ended up winning on a game winning field goal. I walk out of MetLife and everybody's chanting, Tommy, Tommy. It was just amazing to watch. And that's my first storyline. Being a Giants fan, it just completely took over our fan base and gave us something to root for. Their season was over in September, or at least so we thought. And our second or my second storyline of the year, and I'd like to get your guys' opinions on this one, especially. Love it or hate it, the demise of the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't know exactly what happened. I don't know who to credit it to. But you're the best team in the league. You're like what 9-1, something like that, and then Drew Lock just comes out and I torches you guys, and then after the game, I don't know if you saw that clip where he goes, I guess Jalen Hurts is sick or something like that. And from there, it's just a downhill. It seemed it's unfortunate for you guys because you really look like you're trending towards another Super Bowl appearance. But I'd like to hear what you guys think about that.
Yeah, Ben, do you wanna start it off and then I'll wrap it up?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, start before I get all angry. I'll talk about the Tommy Cutlet story. I mean, just incredible story. I mean, I this year I believe was the most used quarterbacks in NFL history. There were so many quarterback injuries. It was a crazy season, but I think Tommy Cutlets was probably outside of Joe Flacco. Those were the two big like backup quarterback stories. And you know what? Good for him. He's going to have probably a decent size NFL career as a backup just because he performed well in like 4 games. You know, that's those games got him millions of dollars, and now he's somewhat of a brand. I mean, people are going to know who he is in the New York, New Jersey area for the next decade, I'm sure. Like it's not nobody's going to forget that. I certainly won't. So, you already seen him with bad deals and stuff like that. So, good for him. And I'm glad he made the Giants draft position worse. Like, well, I guess how would I word that? Worse, better? I don't know. He made it not towards the top three. It's not a top three pick, which I'm happy about. But moving along to my Philadelphia Eagles, as you can see the lights, big Birds fan over here. But it's just, and you brought it up, that Seattle game, that was the start of the downfall. Jalen Hurts was sick. He had to fly separately to Seattle by himself. And look, I just don't think he should have played. I, you know, he's coming off, coming in second place in the MVP voting the season before. But in that situation, you got to think about your quarterback's health and his mental state. And I just don't think he was prepared to play an NFL football game. Alongside that, the defense. I mean, Sean Desai sucked, but you cannot fire your defensive coordinator in the final third of the season. What does that tell your defensive players? That says we don't have any confidence in what you guys are doing. Number one. And number two, although it wasn't a complete playbook change, the terminology was changed. And we know that because in statements after, players have said that they were somewhat confused at certain things that happened in the defense. And that's just an issue. It's a really big issue. And there was a lot of holes on this team. Going into the season, us as fans didn't see it, but it was clear to see we had old cornerbacks who just got hurt, weren't quick, and we had a guy named James Bradbury who forgot he was playing in the NFL apparently. So a lot of changes are going to need to be made this offseason. I don't think it's one thing specifically you can point to. Obviously, they hired 2 new coordinators who I think are going to do really well for this team. But look, I mean, there's going to need to be personnel changes too, and Howie might have to change his philosophy on on how he values linebackers, because this season was probably some of the worst linebacker play I've ever seen in my life watching the NFL. But what do you think, Chris?
I mean, dude, you clear up a lot of it for me. I mean, you don't expect it from a team that's so good to just start really just sliding down a hill so fast. You really just don't expect it at all. But, it was just a really big thing with the coordinators. I mean, we saw today that the Eagles unfortunately released Kevin Byard. I mean, when you get a player of that caliber, I'm positive, 100% positive that every Philly fan was really hyped up about that, including
I was.
myself. Yeah,
Yeah.
and he had a little bit of a down year, but like I don't think it's time to move off of him yet per se as someone similar to like Bradbury. You're paying Bradbury a lot. I see the reason as to why they cut Byard, and it's gonna be more so from what I assume is that they're just gonna re-sign him for cheaper. Just to have extra money in free agency because you have holes to fill. It's obvious you have holes to fill. You filled in the coaching hole, which was the biggest out of all of them. Um, to kind of move over to some other things though, did we enjoy the Super Bowl?
So I can start. I would say I personally thought it was a good game overall. The first half was kind of a struggle, but as the second half moved along and then the overtime happened, I mean, what more can you ask for from a Super Bowl? All you want is a competitive Super Bowl. You don't want a blowout, which we haven't seen in a while, thank God. But we have seen a few. So I'm glad that there was no like Panthers versus Broncos type of thing. But at the same time, I didn't want either team to win. So it kind of sucked watching the trophy presentation. I made myself watch it because I love football and I have to. But did I enjoy it? No, not at all. Did not enjoy it. Um, I will say though, shout out to to Big Dom. He did curse. I don't cheer on injuries. I never will. Never have. Never will. But I mean, he got cursed. Dre Greenlaw got cursed by Big Dom. I mean, if you talk trash to Big Dom, you're just going to get cursed, and that's scientifically proven by that injury. Um, and also, 49ers players, if you're listening, please learn the rules. You have to know the rules. You're an NFL athlete. It's not that hard. I knew the rules. So, how are you getting paid millions of dollars to play this game and you don't know the rules? That's all I got to say to that.
Yeah, Gabe, what did you wind up thinking about, the aftermath of that game and, our Super Bowl champs for the year?
Yeah, I can say that I agree with probably both of you guys, and that I wasn't so enthusiastic about the teams that made the Super Bowl. I mean, I'm sure it's the same with you. I would have much rather watch the Ravens Super Bowl and much more entertaining. I feel like two new teams, but I mean, what we got at the end of the day, and as much as I hate to say it, it's kind of cool to see like a dynasty being built right in front of you. I mean, Patrick Mahomes clearly is destined for something special. I mean, people are already saying he's one of the best quarterbacks of all time, and he's like, what, 27 or 28 years old. It's special. Do I want to see him win the Super Bowl? Absolutely not. But that's what I got. It was pretty slow paced, obviously. I mean, that's what I thought it was. And then all of a sudden, you're in overtime. There's like 5 seconds left. The clock's running. There's no timeout being called. And the Chiefs run a play, and I'm like, whoa! it felt like it was very slow paced up until like the final couple minutes of regular time and overtime, and like, okay, happening here. So overall, I thought it was a pretty good game. I mean, it stayed close throughout the entire game, regardless of what the score was and how low scoring it was, at least in the first half. But I mean, it's hard not to say that it's cool what you're seeing. You're seeing a dynasty being built, and this is something that people are going to talk about for a long time to come.
Yeah, yeah. So as us being a new show and stuff, we have our own new idea of a segment that Ben came up with where we talk about our favorite player for the week. Do you guys want me to start, or did one of you guys really have somebody that you really want to talk about?
No, you can go ahead. You go ahead.
Okay. after sitting and just thinking of like, okay, I've never thought about this before. Who have I really been enjoying recently? And I know it's not football because obviously for this we pick any player. I gotta go with my guy Tyson Forrester on the Flyers. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
I've met him, so there's a little bit of bias there, but I'll put it to you this way, right? He's played a total of 63 games in his career so far for hockey. He's 22. Out of those games, he's played 55 this season. That's a big deal. And he has 14 goals and 12 assists for the season this year, as he was on a 7-game streak with a goal. And I mean, over his entire career so far, he's sitting at 17 goals and 16 assists. I mean, that's really good for a 22-year-old who's really like finding his role in the Flyers, and he's really balling out. So for my pick of the week, I'm gonna go with Tyson Forrester.
Yeah, yeah. I guess I'll hop into it next. So I will say for this segment, it can be a current player, a former player, a coach, anything just around the sport that we think is funny, interesting, cool, whatever. So for me, my fans player of the week is Richard Sherman. Richard Sherman, what are you doing? Why are you getting a DUI, dude? You have you have a prime position. You're covering football, the NFL. You you made it, dude. You made a bunch of money in your career, and now you have a job that you should be able to keep unless you do anything dumb like
And
you
a
just
job that
did.
you enjoy, to be fair.
Yeah, and he enjoyed it. I mean, I think I did. Unless he was faking on camera, it seemed like he really enjoyed it, you know. He has great charisma with the players. I feel like I enjoyed watching him, you know. He was a really funny player when he was in the league, and he's funny on TV. Like, it's not a surprise that he fits perfectly into that role, but is he going to keep that position now? I don't know. I mean, I just don't get these athletes that do these things like getting a DUI. Like there's Uber now. You're a multimillionaire. Just take an Uber or a Lyft or whatever you want to do. Like or call a friend. Like I don't get it. Like you're allowed to drink and have fun and do whatever you want. Like I'm not saying don't do that, but just make smarter decisions. Like it's really not that difficult. And I while it is funny, I'm happy nobody got hurt in that situation. It's also kind of sad. I mean, he was really good on TV. I liked watching him. I don't know if he's gonna stay in that position. I hope they give him a second chance, and I hope he makes the best of it. But I don't even know if this is a second chance. He's done some other really dumb things too. So I hope he figures out whatever's going on with in his personal life. I'm sure that there's got to be some sort of issue that's leading him to do that. But um, yeah, I mean, Gabe, who's your fans player of the week?
Yeah, so first off, I mean, couldn't agree more. I mean, as much as we can sit here and kind of look at it and laugh and be like, what's going on there? It's like you got to make better decisions. And you're a multimillionaire, you can do whatever you want. Just don't do that. It's sad because yeah, there's probably some external factors there that we don't know about. I mean, yeah, especially when you have a job like his. So actually, similarly, I chose somebody that's also a former player. I went to, so also outside of the football space. He's on the NBA TNT, but he always seems to make noise outside of that. And it's always for some interesting reason. So like I said, my player of the week is Shaq. He did a couple things pretty recently that are interesting, some interesting takes. So the first one was that I think he might have been at a party for the Super Bowl and he met Ice Spice through Taylor Swift, and then he like shot his shot at Ice Spice, which is like you're like how old now? And your son, I feel like he has a couple sons that are probably now older. Sharif has got to be older than Ice Spice is, right? Like just like what is going on there? Like you're Shaquille O'Neal, you have a family. Let's chill out, right? And then he also went on record to say that he would have joined the Chicago Bulls in the '90s and then later the San Antonio Spurs in the 2000s if super teams were quote unquote acceptable. Um, it's just like it's an interesting take to say because like all right, they're not losing like Jordan, Pippen, that whole team plus Shaq. right? Like they're not losing. Same thing with San Antonio. I mean, Tim
I don't
Duncan,
think they would lose a
there's
game.
this crazy. I don't think so either. I mean, Tim Duncan, there's a stat that every single season that he played that was 82 games, right? There was that one season that was cut short due to, I think, a player strike. He won 50 or more games, right? You add Shaq into that equation, like, all right, we know what's going to happen. Regardless, though, I think like he's in the media, so he's expected to make headlines even outside of that, just relevant. But he has a massive ego, and I think rightfully so. You're Shaquille O'Neal, you're one of the best players of all time, but I think you need to chill. I think
Yeah.
your ego is massive, and that's okay because of who you are. But let's chill with these comments. You think you're the greatest player of all time, and I think the three of us can confidently say you're one of the greatest, but you're not the greatest, right? So let's chill with these comments. I don't think Jordan. I mean, Jordan can say his own things, right? But like, let's look at like Larry Bird, Magic Johnson. They're not going around saying those type of things. Or those other guys that are in the all-time great conversation. They're not really making those comments. So Shaquille O'Neal, you can do whatever you want. I just think it's a little cringy when you make those type of comments.
I mean, yeah, I actually really like that pick though for the sole factor of like, not only do I like him as a player, but I think like especially when him and Charles Barkley are going at each other, it's so funny. It's
Yeah.
actually
It's
so funny.
Yeah. Charles Barkley finally got on Instagram. I just saw that today.
My dad actually told me about that this morning, and I saw it, and I was like, "Wait, what?" And then I clicked on Charles Barkley's following, and I wanted to see what other NBA players he followed. The only one he follows is literally Shaq. That's it, and Kenny Smith. I'm like, it
That's
makes
funny.
sense, but you would think you would follow like like a bunch of other people and stuff. But yeah, so getting into, the main part of the show though, our big football talk. We're gonna talk some combine now. Who's looking good, et cetera, et cetera. I'll start off. I wrote down for you guys to hear a little bit. I wrote down my top five and where I have them predicted to go for
All right.
team wise in the draft. So I'm gonna start off. If you know me well, and I'm gonna explain this now, for my sports teams, it goes Phillies, Eagles, Flyers, Sixers, Union. For college football, I never really had a team besides Temple, but you can't always sit there and enjoy football when you can't even win a game. It's kind of hard to watch sometimes. Like I trust me, I love Temple to death. We had some great guys on the team, like a little while back, like Deion Dawkins and Hassan Reddick, etc. But I always wanted to be able to claim a football team that's actually good. And then the more and more players that just started ending up on the Eagles that were from Georgia, I was like, how can I not root for them at this point? I was like literally, it takes up over my entire hand of players that are on the Eagles from Georgia. And I kind of just went with Georgia at that point. But to start us off, I'm going with Brock Bowers for my number one favorite out of my top five. I mean, I think he's gonna be a really good tight end. I truly believe that. And my big thing here is I think he's gonna wind up going five to the Chargers. And I think the really big thing here is, and you can call it a hot take, but if he plays with the Chargers for like most of his career with Justin Herbert, are we really gonna sit here and not think that this guy could wind up being a top five tight end ever? He has the
Dude,
talent.
what? Uh, ugh. All right. Should I intervene here? I think I gotta
Yeah,
intervene here.
go for it.
Number one, do not think he's going to the Chargers. I think that's not happening. I think Joe Alt. I think with Jim Harbaugh coming in, they're going to take a tackle. Um, do I think Brock Bowers is a great player and probably a top five talent in this draft? 110%. He's one of the best tight end prospects of all time that I've seen. Well, I can't say all time that I've personally seen since I've been following the NFL draft. Will he be a top five tight end of all time? It's possible.
Time will tell.
I'm one for the bold predictions. I will say the minute that Lamar Jackson got drafted, I said he's going to be a Hall of Famer. I mean, so I'm not one to shy away from a bold prediction. I don't know where he's going to go though. That's the thing. I don't think he's going to go to the Chargers. Um, Do I think he could go 10 to the Jets? Maybe. I think that would be a fun fit. Do I think he's going to be a Hall of Famer? That's hard to say. I think he could get there. I just think it's really hard as a tight end. And the tight end position right now is just so deep in the league. So, yeah, but that's my 2 cents on that. But let's hear the rest of your list before I intervene some more.
All right, so it's very questionable with that one if you really think so, but I like it personally. Like I said, it might be a little bit of bias, but I do like that pick. I'm gonna talk about one of my other guys, Jaden Daniels, man. I think he's underrated. I mean,
I
people
agree.
are sitting there and they're like, okay, they look at Caleb, they're like, all right, Caleb's one. Okay, cool, whatever. Then they're like Drake May too. Why isn't anybody thinking that Jaden Daniels won't go too? Why doesn't anybody think that? I
Dude,
think Jaden
I
Daniels is
completely agree.
great. I think he's a
completely
great
agree.
quarterback, and I think he would fit well with the Commander system. I actually truly believe that. I
Mhm.
mean, you'd pair him up with Terry McLaurin. I mean, I like Jaden Daniels a lot for a quarterback in this draft. Moving on
I
though.
might have to interject here real quick.
Oh, go ahead. Go
As a
ahead.
Giants fan, right? We need one of two positions. We need a quarterback. We need a receiver desperately, right? Jaden Daniels obviously is being talked about. Obviously, now he's projected to go 2 or 3 around that range. So it's less likely that we're going to pick him. However, originally he was kind of on the draft board for us, and I look at him. Obviously, he has like the speed. He has all these like assets, like arm, everything, right? But look back at ASU. My friends go there. I didn't watch a whole lot of Arizona State games when he was there, but I can tell you that they told me that he was terrible. And I don't
Yeah.
know if there's a level of competition that you face in the Pac-12. That's an elite football conference, as we know, that's now being disbanded. Whatever you have your thoughts on that. But I just when you like development is there, right? Like development is very real, and you can develop into a Heisman level player like he did. But to see how he was treated after he left Arizona State, I don't know if you guys saw that video of the locker room after when he had his name up and they were like tearing his like locker down and all that. I'm like, that's not really what a leader looks like. I think I could be very wrong on this. He could be the next Lamar Jackson, right? He could be anything. I'm just glad that if he goes number 2, like you guys think he might, that he's not on our team. I think that there's better options. I don't know whether we go QB this draft or next draft or what our deal is. Second round, maybe. Who knows? But I'm glad if he goes number 2 that he's not on our team. He can mess up the Commanders. He doesn't have to come to us.
Yeah, that's kind of funny. But yeah, like I said, I think he's underrated at this point when everybody only wants to talk about Caleb and Drake and not his name in that. But that's just my opinion. I think Ben's agreeing with me here. But
Yeah.
to move on, I also really am a big fan of Jared Verse in this draft.
Mm.
I think Jared Verse is going to be a really good pick, and I actually have him predicted to go to Jacksonville. I think what's going to wind up happening is they're going to franchise tag Josh Allen, and he's gonna stick around, and they're gonna have Jared Verse, and that defense really is gonna come together with them and Trayvon Walker, because you'd be shocked, but Trayvon Walker actually had a solid year, a solid second year. He ended with 10 sacks, which is good because he was a first overall pick. You expect a lot from a kid like that, so hopefully he could really find his stride. But you put Jared Verse into a defense like that, I think it's a perfect fit. And he was good in college. All
Yeah.
throughout college, he was good. So I have high hopes for him, especially if he goes to Jacksonville. Next up, in my opinion, I know there might be some shots here, but in my opinion, the best wide receiver in the draft, I'm going with Malik Nabers. I think he's great. I mean, I also have him predicted to go to the Bears. Well, in my main draft, I have the Bears trading around a bunch and not drafting Caleb and keeping Justin Fields
Yeah.
to pair
Yeah.
him up with Malik Nabers and DJ Moore, which would be a phenomenal duo
Oh,
for him.
yeah.
That'd be insane.
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna intervene here. This wide receiver class is amazing. There are so many good wide receivers that I really like. I think I am agreeing with you though. I am agreeing with you. I do think Malik Neighbors is going to end up having the best career if he goes to the right place. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. right now, if we're playing tomorrow, I'd rather take Marvin Harrison Jr., but I like Malik Neighbors' traits better and what his potential is. Um, Looking outside of those two, Rome Odunze and Keon Coleman, I love both of those guys. And then if you're looking for some depth options, Xavier Worthy, really, really good receiver. I don't know why people think that his teammate is better than him. I think Xavier Worthy is going to be a better player. And then you just got so much depth in this. Like, I think there's going to be a day three wide receiver similar to last year that's maybe not at Puka levels because Puka is just probably the best rookie wide receiver of all time. I don't even think that's an arguable thing. But there's going to be somebody that sticks out. And watch out for this name, Luke McCaffrey, brother of Christian McCaffrey, wide receiver out of Rice. He could get drafted. I think somebody's going to draft him. You know, if his last name wasn't McCaffrey, I don't think he'd get drafted. But his last name is McCaffrey. He has the bloodlines. He's going to get picked. He's going to get picked, and he's probably going to be overhyped because he's not that good. He didn't really show anything in college, but watch if he's good, that would be really funny. But yeah.
Now, to go on to my last guy that I wrote down, and this might be one of my favorite picks here, Chop Robinson. And I say this because we talked about this team earlier. The stars are shining for them. Why not pair him up with Will Anderson Jr.?
Wow.
That would be a fire pick in Houston to have them two going at your quarterback, especially if Chop develops the way people are expecting him to. That's a really good pick, and I'm really high on Chop Robinson. I mean, like, what are your thoughts here, both of you? Like, if they were to pair him up with Will Anderson and stuff.
Gabe, you want to go first?
I got one thing to say. Don't want to play the Houston Texans with that offense now and that defense. I mean, they're one team that I don't want to have on my schedule. That's all I got.
Yeah.
That's all I need to say.
Yeah, no, I mean that's fair. I think Houston is gonna go more for a DB. I think that's the bigger need. But if Chop Robinson is still on the board, which I don't know if he will be, because I feel like he's gonna move up after the pro day and the combine, just showing his athleticism. If he's able to do that, I think he'll move up a little bit because at Penn State he got hurt during the season, and you could just see that defense was nowhere near as good. I mean, they're still good because they're Penn State. They have a 5-star as a backup, but I mean, he was just a difference maker, and he's going to be a difference maker in the league. And if he ended up in Houston, that would be the best pass rush in the league, like right away, in my opinion. And especially if you keep Derek Barnett as depth with how he performed last. I can't believe I'm saying that as an Eagles fan, but with how he performed last season, I mean, he had like 6 sacks down the stretch. He was amazing. So that would just be an incredible pass rush. I want to talk about a few more players in the draft. My favorite player, for the Eagles, the perfect fit. I think we'd have to trade up to get him, but Quinion Mitchell, quarterback from Toledo, he's really, really good. He has great speed, and he's a really good playmaker, which I think, similar to Darius Slay, I think having a Darius Slay on the roster will really help him. I think we need to get a cornerback. I know we have those young guys, but I think we need another young guy in that room to get ready for when Darius Slay is gone. Hopefully James Bradbury is gone really soon. It's funny because last year I was making fun of Giants fans. I was like, "Oh, thank you for giving him to us for free," and now he sucks. So I guess joke's on us. But what do you guys think of Quinion Mitchell? Do you think the Eagles will have a chance to get him? And do you think he's the top corner in the draft? Because I personally think he is. I know that's crazy to say, but what do you think?
Gabe, do you want to go or do you want me to go?
That's all you. That's
All right,
Philadelphia
all
County
right.
over there. That's country.
It's interesting. I mean, I think that they would have to trade up if they want to get him per se, but in this sense, I don't think they're gonna wind up getting him. I think if anything, they're gonna get Kool-Aid McKinstry. I think that makes the most sense. But I knew you were gonna say Quinyon Mitchell too, because when we were in the radio station on Wednesday, I overheard you talking to Tyler about him. It sounds like you were really high on him. I mean, he's a good player. You know, you definitely need another corner. That it shows that that's exactly what you need. But I don't know. I mean, will the Eagles trade up for him? I don't know. I think they like where they are, if anything. I think they're fine with drafting someone like Kool-Aid if it comes down to it instead of, because I mean, what do you think they would have to give up to move up? Because how many spots do you think they would have to move up? Would you say
Um,
like 3, 4?
I think they probably have to move to like 18, probably maybe 17. So you're giving up. You do have 2 third-round picks this year, so I think you could. Now it's really heavily dependent on what they do in free agency, which we'll get onto right after we finish this conversation. Some free agent talk, but do I think they are going to trade up? No. Um, is it my hope and dream that they trade up and get him? Yeah. I am worried about Kool-Aid McKinstry. I was high on him, but he is hurt. Just reported today. He should be ready for training camp, but the Eagles have a bad track record of drafting corners that had an injury history in college. I mean, you look at Sidney Jones, who's currently on the roster, um, or that's it, Sidney Jones, who is not on the roster anymore, and then Avonte Maddox, who is on the roster. Both those guys, Avonte Maddox had some good times here in Philly, but I think his time is up. Um, but but yeah, I mean, do we want to move on to some free agent talk now? Since I brought that up.
Before we get into that, Gabe, do you have any prospect that you wanted to bring up real quick?
Oh yeah,
Sure. I guess we're in an interesting situation here. Obviously, you're both probably pretty familiar, I guess, with what's going on. Um, there's not one prospect in particular that I want to bring up, but I have a number of people here that very possibly could be wearing royal blue next year. And honestly, I'm a little torn, right? I heard the Malik Neighbors talk, right? Is he set to have a better career than Maserati Marv, right? Like who knows? But what happens if, let's say, Marvin Harrison Jr. falls to Fort? Is that the signal for the Giants to maybe trade up and take their franchise wide receiver? Is that, or should we wait at 6 and then if Malik Neighbors is still there, which pretty good chance we snag him, or do we go Romo Dunze? Or do we just completely other direction? Do we take a quarterback? Do we see if Drake May falls? Do we,
here's
trade
my
with the Bears if you think
yeah
they're going to keep Justin Fields? I want to hear what you guys think about our situation from the outside perspective, and what
yeah.
would you do if you're in
So
the Giants' shoes?
so if I'm the Giants GM, I'm either trading up or trading down. There's no way I'm staying at 6. But if it were me, I'm not taking a quarterback this year. Um, and I might trade down a little bit. I think the wide receiver depth, as I said earlier, is really good. You guys clearly need a wide receiver, among other things, but I think a wide receiver would help the most. And you gave that contract to Daniel Jones. You got to get him another weapon and see if he can turn it around. And if not, you trade it down, you pick up those extra draft assets. So then maybe next year you guys could trade up for a quarterback if that's something you need. So that's my take. What do you think, Chris?
It's an interesting team to look at, especially like when you guys were selling at the trade deadline. Obviously you traded away Leonard Williams and stuff. It's a real interesting team to look at. I mean, I feel like if I'm sitting there at 6, I mean the way my draft board went is that you guys would take Drake May at 6. I mean, if he's there at 6, I don't see why not. And then you
I
just got to
just
figure out what you're gonna do with Daniel Jones in a sense.
I don't think there's any of those top 3 quarterbacks are making it past 6. I think if Drake May is still on the board at 4, somebody's going to trade up.
Well, keep in mind though, because the way my board went was this was when I did a mock draft where it didn't allow me to do trades, but it
Okay.
ended up
Okay.
being Caleb, Jaden, Marvin Harrison, Joel, Brock Bowers, and then Drake.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
that's why I say that if there's definitely gonna be trades. If someone trades up, then he'll be gone. But more than likely, if you don't really hear anything and you're the Giants and it doesn't seem like anybody's gonna trade up, I don't think Cardinals or Chargers would go for a quarterback. So at that point, I would snag them.
Yeah.
And then
Definitely.
let's say in that situation, I mean Drake May was originally projected to go what, like second or third. Let's say he is taken before we get to him. What about that second kind of, not second round, but that second group of quarterbacks that we haven't talked about yet too much, like JJ McCarthy, we got Bo Nix, Michael Penix. Are they worth
Uh,
trading back and getting, or what do you think?
so here's my opinions on those next three quarterbacks. We're gonna JJ McCarthy, Bo Nix, Michael Penix. I think they're the next tier, and then after that, it's pretty much crap, honestly. Um, Maybe a Jordan Travis could be a good pick, but anyway, JJ McCarthy, he scares me as a prospect. He's probably going to end up going top 10, which I think is crazy. He's very raw. He wasn't used. I trust Jim Harbaugh as a coach, and there's a reason Jim Harbaugh did not really seem to be trusting his quarterback. Um, Now they had a dominant run game, so they could lean on that, but yeah, and similarly with Bo Nix, I'm not a huge fan of Bo Nix. I feel like it took him so long to figure it out at the college level. How long is it going to take him to figure out the NFL game? And he's already an old guy. He's been in college for a long time. And then my favorite, Michael Penix, outside of that top tier, obviously, I really like Michael Penix. I think he could come in and play right away and not stink up the joint. Um, he's definitely not a first round pick. I think he's going to sneak into the second round for a team that thinks they need a quarterback to compete with who they have. So a Giants, that could fit pretty well. I hope that doesn't happen because I really like Michael Penix, but you guys always seem to draft the players I like, so he's probably going to go there.
I actually do have Michael Penix as a first round pick.
Okay.
I actually have him going to the Raiders at
Mm.
I think it's 13. I think that's a good pick. But to be fair, I really don't have any quarterback going later than the first round that we just touched base on besides Jordan Travis and Bo Nix. I would not be shocked if JJ McCarthy goes in the first round at all. I really wouldn't at all. Now we're gonna move into our next part. We were gonna talk some free agents, go over NFL's top 10. I think the way we're gonna do this is I'll name the player going from 10 to 1. We'll each say where we think they're gonna go and why. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
All right. So starting off with number 10, we got Mike Evans. Where are we thinking?
Uh, Not to be
Or
boring
put
to
it to
start
you
off.
this way. Put it to you
Yeah.
this way. I wrote two things down. So say where you think he's gonna go and where you want him to go.
Okay. Sounds good. I don't want to be boring to start off, but I think he's going to stay in Tampa. I think he wants to be one of those guys that plays his entire career in one place. Um, where would I want him to go? I think him in Houston would be sick. Imagine that wide receiver core. You have him and probably Nico Collins on the outside, and you put Tank Dell in the slot. I mean, that's just disgusting. So that would be awesome. I don't think it's going to happen. I think we'll stay in Tampa, but how about you, Gabe?
Yeah, I mean, there's discussion about this. I feel like every time he's up for a new contract, and he always just tends to stay in Tampa. He's somebody that's going to be there for the rest of his career, I feel like. And I mean, honestly, there's so much movement that I also kind of want to see him there too. Like, it's nice to see them have their guy. He's always going to be their wide receiver one until he like regresses to the point where he's not going to be, right? Like, he's always been solid, and I think he should just stay where he is. Why not? Why switch it up when you don't have to? That's my perspective.
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of sound boring here too. I mean, there's a few top free agents that we're gonna touch base on besides him that I also think are gonna stay in their selective spots, but I don't see why he would move. I think Mike Evans is perfectly fit where he's at, and that's where I want him to stay too. I think if anything, the Buccaneers have one of the biggest off seasons out of all the teams this off season. I think they gotta make some money moves, and I think it'll start with him. Moving on though to number 9, we got Daniil Hunter. I think this is an interesting one.
Yeah,
What are we thinking?
very interesting. So he signed a 1-year deal, which said they could not tag him this past all season. He's gone. He's not staying unless they agree to a long-term deal, which I think is possible. Don't think it's gonna happen. I feel like a team like a Carolina could try and sign him, pair him alongside Brian Burns, and at least get one piece of your team to be at an elite level. You gotta copy like an Eagles style, and you gotta be good in both trenches. I think bringing in Daniel Hunter would be a really good fit for that team. Um, where do I feel like honestly, I think that's where I want him to go to. I want to see Carolina get better. I think that's just a perfect fit if they're willing to give up the money that it's going to cost because he put up almost 16 and a half sacks, so he's going to be an expensive player.
Yeah, what do you think, Gabe?
Yeah, I think that Carolina pick is interesting because Brian Burns I also have on here as somebody that's up for contract, and that would I guess assume that they sign both, and I think that's possible. Um, I mean, we talked about Houston possibly going edge in the draft, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So
Yeah,
I
that's
think
where I
that's
had
I mean
Chop Robinson.
I mean they have the space because of all those rookie contracts, right? So I think that's a possibility, and I think that I mean it's another level up to their defense, so why not?
Yeah, that's interesting. So that's where you have him. That's where you think he's gonna go, or is that where you want him to go?
I mean, I think it could be a little bit of both. I mean, New York and Houston are on opposite sides of the country. I don't want to see them, so why not let him go over there?
That's fair. All right, going into number 8, we have Antoine Winfield Jr. And this is an interesting one. Oh wait, I didn't even say where I think Daniil Hunter's going. I have him going to the Bears.
I was
I
thinking
think it's a
about that.
perfect fit.
Yeah,
Bear,
I
he's
was thinking
going
about
to the
that.
Bears likely, and that's where I think he's likely and where I want him to go.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, but it's hard because he's a division rival. But I feel like that is a really good fit.
He'll get paid.
Um,
He'll get paid to play
yeah.
alongside Montez Sweat. But moving on, we have Antoine Winfield Jr. What are we thinking here?
All right, I'm gonna go. This, I mean, probably crazy, but I'm sure you guys know what I'm gonna say. Bring
I
him to
know
the
what you're gonna
birds.
say. Yep.
Bring him to the birds, Howie. Get it done. This guy's 26. He's in the prime of his career. Top 10 at his position, in my opinion. And you got
No,
to get it done.
that's
And
not an opinion. That's a fact.
there you go. It's a fact. Um, he makes game-changing plays. He's a great defender. He's great in coverage. He's great in the run. He's just good at everything. He would fit this team like bringing in Malcolm Jenkins did. I feel like that could be a very similar kind of guy. Does he have that leadership quality? I don't know, but is he similarly talented? Yes. Um, that's where I want him to go. Do I think he's going to go to the Eagles? Absolutely not. Um, where do I think he will go? I don't know because safety is such a hard position to predict. Hmm. I don't want to. I don't want to repeat teams. I don't want to sound boring. I could see a Commanders in play. I think him alongside Cameron Curl would be kind of a weird fit, but I think the Commanders ownership wants to spend money. They have new owners in Josh Harris, who we know pretty well in Philadelphia. He wants to make a statement. I think he's going to make it in the draft, drafting a quarterback, but I think at the same time he wants to make a statement in the free agency field, whatever you want to call it. So I think he's going to end up being a Commander.
Yeah. What do you think, Gabe?
Well, I'm kind of on the opposite side of the spectrum as Ben here. I think that he does go to Philadelphia whenever, right? Like Chris, I think you mentioned that Byard was dropped just so he can be re-signed for a lower amount. as much as I hate to say it, the Eagles are always cooking something. Especially the last couple of years. It's just like you've taken some of our players. Swift recently just, I mean, like, you're an all-star team, and it only makes sense that Winfield, you need a safety. I mean, I think it's going to happen. Do I want that to happen? Absolutely not. That's disgusting. I would never want to see that in my life. I hope he stays in Tampa Bay. There you go.
Okay. For me, I think if anybody really is gonna stay in Tampa, I think it's gonna wind up being him, and that's where I kind of like him at. I think what's gonna wind up happening is Baker is gonna wind up signing long term back with them. I think if any team would sign Baker, it would be them to bring him back. And I don't think they're too worried about re-signing him, but I think they're more so worried about re-signing a guy like Antoine. So I think he's gonna wind up getting franchise tagged and brought back if they
Hmm.
can't get a deal done. That's definitely
Yeah.
what I'm thinking here. He's a great player, and I think that's the perfect fit for him. I mean, so be it. If he wants to come to the Eagles, I'm all for it. But like I said, I think he's gonna wind up staying in Tampa. Moving on, I think this is an interesting one. We have Justin Matabuke.
Hmm.
What are we
Great,
thinking here?
great player. Gonna give a boring answer. I think it's 90% chance he gets franchise tagged. Um, you don't want to sign him to a long-term deal just based off one elite season. Uh, but at the same time, you don't want to lose that interior pass rush. That's probably one of the hardest things to get in the league. So I think it's a franchise tag. I think it's almost guaranteed to. So not much more to add there. What about you, Gabe?
Um, yeah, I think it's very possible. I'm not really on top of the Kansas City Chiefs financials right now, but obviously Chris Jones is very high up on this free agency list, and I think if they lose him, which a lot of people think that they will, why not go after another top DT? Um, I mean, I'm not sure if the Chiefs have the money to sign him at the moment, but if they were able to make something work, like the Kansas City Chiefs always seem to do, on the field at least, then why not go after another DT?
I like that. I like
Yeah.
that. I think if anything, I think where I have him going and where I want, I think he's gonna wind up staying with the Ravens for both. Like I said, some of my answers are pretty boring here, but some of them just seem really realistic to me, and I think that's another one. I don't see any team really running out the door after him after one really good season. If I was a team, I would keep him on my radar, especially if he takes a little bit long to sign. But I will sprint at him right out the gate until I see a little bit more from him. Moving on, though, we got this one. This one's a really interesting one. I'm ready to hear the answers for this. L'Jarius Sneed.
Yeah. I really hope you guys don't have the same take as me because I thought a lot about this. I think he's going to get franchise tagged, but he's not going to be a Kansas City Chief. He's going to be traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh needs another cornerback, and he fits their system to a T. He's a Mike Tomlin player. You can't tell me L'Jarius Sneed doesn't scream Mike Tomlin. He's going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler, and that defense is going to continue to be dominant in the AFC next season.
Gabe, where do you have him going before I get into my rant?
Boring answer for me. I'm taking the easy route. I think the Chiefs try to retain as much of their squad as they possibly can. They just won the Super Bowl. They're on a dynasty run. Yeah, there you go.
I don't know why you said the Steelers. You're the first person I ever heard say that he thinks he's gonna be a Steeler. For where I think he's gonna go and where I want, he's gonna come to the Eagles. If anybody's coming to the Eagles, it'll be L'Jarius Sneed. And I say that for multiple factors. I mean, the dude posted on Instagram, if no one noticed, a picture of himself doing the Eagles soar with the caption of the Eagles emoji too. And I think if
Yeah.
anybody's willing to take a corner like that, I think it's the Eagles to pair him alongside Darius
I,
Slay. I think it's a really good fit. The more
I
and more I
agree.
think about it,
I
the
just don't
more
think
I
it's going
want
to
it,
happen.
and the more likely I think it'll happen. If
Yeah.
anything.
I want
I
it,
don't
but
know.
it's not gonna happen.
I don't hate the Steelers pick though, because I could see it happening, and Joey Porter Jr. is very good too. So I
Yeah,
don't hate that
imagine
at
that
all.
duo. Oh,
Number 5, another really interesting one, Brian Burns.
yeah. This one's pretty straightforward for me. They're gonna agree to like a 5-year deal. They turned down multiple first round picks for trade. There's no way they're gonna let him go. They're gonna give him a blank check for whatever amount of money he wants. He's gonna be a top 5 paid pass rusher in the league. He's not going anywhere. There's no chance. There's absolutely no chance he leaves Carolina. And if he does, then Carolina should just forfeit every game next season because that would be so stupid.
Yeah, what do you think,
Right?
Gabe?
Yeah.
Wish I had a better answer for you. Carolina, I mean, they got to have a lot of money at this point, right? Their star
Mm,
players on a rookie contract, and I mean, we can get into how he played later, but like, yeah, blank check, like Ben said, he's going to sign for a ridiculous amount. They got to keep somebody on their team, right? Like, they got to have somebody that's good. Like, come on now.
I
Yeah,
I
I
could
see
see
him staying in Carolina, and I want to see him staying in Carolina because, like, give him something to be happy about.
I could see where both you come from here, but I'm gonna be different. I don't think he's going back to Carolina. I don't think so. But now my where I think he's gonna go and where I want him to go are both different, by the way. Where I think he's gonna go is the Commanders. I
Mm,
think Dan Quinn is a very big defensive guy. And I think if anything were to happen, that he would want to go after a guy that young to put on a team like this after they have over 100 million in cap space. He's gonna get a big offer from the Commanders. I would not put it past them at all. Now, where I want him to go, I do want to see the Cardinals start to come up. I think he would be a good fit for the Cardinals to add to their
mm,
defense. And
absolutely.
they're a team that's trying to get out of the rebuild and to just start getting guys, and I think he would be a perfect fit on that team, personally. Now, the next one is Christian Wilkins, coming off a really good
Ooh,
year. A really good year.
yeah. Had a really good contract year. When the first few years after he was drafted in the first round, it was like, oh, this guy, I don't know. He doesn't seem to be providing a lot. But last season, when the rest of that defense got decimated, he was there and he was awesome. Great in the run game and surprisingly effective in the pass rush game. He had a career high 61 pressures last season. So it's pretty impressive for a guy that wasn't really meant to be a pass rusher like that. But I I don't know. This is the toss up because I think 50% chance he goes where I want him to go and 50% he stays. Um, where I want him to go is the Oakland, what should be the Oakland Raiders. They're the Las Vegas Raiders now. But yes, I think he's going to end up being a Raider. I think this is a copycat league. I think everybody wants to look at the Eagles and the Chiefs and be like they had dominant defensive lines. Easy for me to say. And they have that edge pressure, one of the best edge rushers in the league, and you continue to get another dominant guy inside, and then how are you supposed to pass protect or run against that? So I think the Raiders would be a good landing spot for him.
Yeah, where do you want him to go?
Yeah, so I'll make things a little interesting here. So I said Madubuike to Kansas City, assuming that Chris
Mm,
Jones leaves. Why not Wilkins to Baltimore? Let's have a little like defensive tackle like rotation here, Let's
yeah,
mix it up. Um, yeah, I mean, in terms of where I want him to go, I mean, like, as long as it doesn't affect us, like, yeah, give him to Baltimore. Let's see what they can do. Give him a good defense and see what Lamar can do. Give him the football and play. See if they can make a Super Bowl run.
Interesting. I think if anything, I think the Dolphins are gonna wind up re-signing him, especially after cutting Xavier Howard and saving him some more money. I think if anything, they're gonna wind up getting Christian Wilkins. But where I want him to go, I think from what I saw last year, I wasn't too confident. I still like this player that I'm about to bring up, and I still think he has the potential. give me him on the Eagles. I think Jordan Davis needs a little bit more time to figure out what he's doing because that just did not look too good to me as of last year. And I think pairing him with Jalen Carter is just amazing. That's just so good. And that's why the Eagles were so dominant last year when, Fletcher Cox was doing his thing and you had Javon Hargrave doing his thing. So I think it would be great spot for Christian Wilkins. And, whether it's a 1-year deal, 2-year, I think the way Howie Roseman is, I can't even explain it. The dude is just a god. I mean, he just knows how to get players and make it happen. So I really would not be shocked if he ended up with the Eagles. Next up, we're going into the top 3 now. We got Josh Allen. What are we thinking here?
Yeah, I mean, great pass rusher. And look, I mean, I don't want to sound boring again, but I feel like we don't have much to talk about. There's no way they're letting him leave. There's no way you can let a top 5, in my opinion, pass rusher in the league go. He's not going anywhere. Give him a blank check again. These pass rushers get blank checks all the time. He's getting one. He's not going anywhere.
Gabe?
I like what they're cooking in Jacksonville. Nothing special for me. I think he's staying there.
Looks like we're going to have a consensus here. Everyone's agreeing on, just hand them that check, let the dude get paid. Like I said earlier, I think they're going to wind up getting Jared Verse too, and I think keeping them too is going to be really good for their defense alongside Trayvon Walker and all that other stuff. I think he's definitely staying. Even if they don't get a contract done, he's getting franchise tag. There's no way. There's just no other way that he ends up leaving. Number 2. Now this is a hard one.
The most interesting one. Yeah.
Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is real interesting because I know that, he's coming off a bad injury, especially late in his career. But I think there's going to be teams looking out for this guy. So what are we thinking?
Yeah, there's a lot of teams that play. You got the Raiders, you got obviously the Vikings, the Falcons, and his former team in the Commanders. I think it's going to be between those 4, maybe a mystery team that I'm not thinking of right now, but I don't think he's going to go to the AFC. So and I don't think the Raiders are going to be dumb and pay a veteran quarterback again. Here we go. I think he's going to stay in Minnesota. I don't think it doesn't seem like he has any interest in leaving. I mean, look at him in the playoffs. Last year, he went at the end of the season, he went shirtless, banged whatever they have up there before the game. He was hype. You see this offseason, he's getting the Justin Jefferson grills, which I think is hilarious. He's a really funny guy. So I don't think he's going to leave, but if he does, it would be fun to see him play for the Atlanta Falcons. I feel like that team is a quarterback away, and I'm not going to go and predict they're going to win the division yet. But if they're not dumb and they do what they should and they sign a Kirk Cousins or they draft a quarterback, that team's going to win that division. I think it's pretty clear and cut that they are going to win that division next season. But yeah, I think I'm going to go the boring route and he's going to stay.
Yeah, what do you think, Gabe?
Yeah, so I have a different answer from where I see him going and then where I want him to go. I think, I'll cut to the chase and where I see him going. I think he's a starting caliber quarterback and he's not going to be a backup, especially if Washington want to keep Howell that starter. I think it's possible. Why go get a QB when you have other holes to fill? I feel like, and I think he's going to stay in Minnesota. Where I want him to go, I heard that they're looking for a new quarterback in Philadelphia. I heard their starter has some issues. I heard he's losing the locker room, and I think that where I want him to go, at least, I want him to see him sign and wear that Kelly Green jersey.
Yeah, I don't know if I could ever see that happening ever. For me, I think he's gonna go back to the Vikings, but I'm gonna have to agree with you, Ben. I think he would be a perfect fit in Atlanta, especially coming up with some of their guys. They needed somebody who can help, Kyle Pitts and Drake London and Bijan. I think he's a really good fit there. You never know. Drake London can wind up really just spiraling out this year. And, when you've seen the effect of Kirk Cousins to Justin Jefferson, I think he could have. I'm not going to say just as good because Drake London will never be on the level of Justin Jefferson, but I think he could have a really good connection with Drake London.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for number 1, we have Chris Jones. This is the one that I've wanted to hear the most. Yeah. What are we thinking?
Yeah, one of the best free agents of the last decade, in my opinion. One of the best defensive players in the play when it comes to playoff play in NFL history. Definitely top 5. I don't think that's even arguable. Look, he's not staying in Kansas City. He's going. I don't know if you guys agree with me or disagree with me on that, but I don't think he's going to stay. I don't think they have enough money for what he wants. And he held out last season for a big deal. And if he doesn't get a big deal from them, he's gone. I don't think they have the money with how much they're paying Patrick Mahomes. But the real question is, where do I think he's going to go? There's a lot of different options here. I think he's going to want to go to a big market. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think he's going to be a New York Giant. I know there's no connections there, and I would absolutely despise it. But I think he wants a big market, and this might come out of left field. I don't even think there's any connections. I haven't seen any reports of this at all. But I think he wants to be in New York, and I don't think the Jets need an interior lineman as much as the Giants do, especially trading away Leonard Williams. Imagine that front that they would build if they had Chris Jones there. I mean, it's scary just the thought, and I really hope it doesn't happen. But I think it is. I think it is.
What are you thinking, Gabe? Because I know damn straight you didn't think Giants at all.
I mean, my mouth is watering right now just thinking about that, right? I mean, as much as I'd love to say, yeah, he's coming to New York, he's wearing royal blue next year. I wish that is where I'd like to see him spot. Absolutely. Like, I'd like to see all these guys in the royal blue, obviously. But Chris Jones, I mean, pair him up with Sexy Dexy. Come on now. But I do think I see him going to a big market. Maybe not the traditional big market that you have in mind. Christian Wilkins went to Baltimore. And why did he do that? He did that because a coach wearing off-white shoes by the name of Mike McDaniel came up to Chris Jones and said, here's a check. Write your name on it. He's going to I think he's going to go to Miami. I think he's playing in Hard Rock. He's playing for like the sexiest team in the NFL, right? Like, everybody wants to play in Miami. Or I don't know if everybody wants to play in Miami, but like, that team looks real good if he goes there. I'll say that much. And I think it's so much fun. Or just from the outside perspective, it looks like it's so much fun to go and play there. And it's a team that I feel like all of us kind of want to be a fan of to some extent. And I see Chris Jones wearing that turquoise and orange next year.
That's an interesting pick because I actually haven't thought about him going to Miami.
Yeah, I like that pick.
I like that, but I haven't thought of that. Now, this is where I really think he's gonna go. He wants a long-term deal. That's obvious. He's gonna get paid. Give me him on the Detroit Lions, baby.
Oh,
put him on the Lions. He would destroy on the Lions with Aiden Hutchinson. I think it's the perfect fit. I think if any team could get a deal done, it's them. They got a window before they have to pay some of these guys. So I'm 100% believe that if anything, their top 2, they're gonna wind up getting back CJ Gardner-Johnson. They're gonna add Chris Jones with that, and it's gonna be insane. I really think that'll happen, and that's where I really want him to go. What do we think on that, real quick?
I mean, I think that'd be such a good fit. I just don't think he's gonna want to live in Detroit. like Detroit doesn't get many free agents for a reason. Yeah, my nightmare scenario, he resigns with the Chiefs. I just want to see him go anywhere else. I think it would be great for the league if he left, personally. But
yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting to see what will wind up happening throughout this free agency. I mean, I'm positive that most of us are going to be wrong. on some
Yeah,
of these. It's gonna be a
absolutely.
wild free agency. Keep in mind, there's still a lot of guys we didn't even touch on that are outside the top 10 too. But that'll be it for this show. How are we feeling? It was good.
Yeah, I think it went really well. I mean, everybody that listened and watched, please give us some feedback. Let us know anything you might want us to talk about in future episodes, and we'll make those changes for you guys. And we're just really excited. And speaking on behalf of everybody.
Yeah, moving up, towards like the next show and stuff where you're gonna touch base on, by then it'll be NHL trade deadline, some more MLB spring training, the NCAA conference tournament, which I know Gabe, you're probably really big and excited for that, aren't you?
So excited for that. Can't wait.
Yeah, definitely some combine aftermath, what the draft's gonna look like as we get closer to it and stuff. There's big things coming ahead, and it's gonna be a real good time. But that'll be it. I actually came up with an outro that I
Mhm.
saved. So stay hyped, stay hungry, and keep the frenzy alive. And we'll see you next time on the Fan Frenzy
Hey.
podcast with me as your host, Chris Borgia, alongside Ben Lotman and Gabe Landon.